Welcome. This is Astrology Insight Now, a weekly forecast program with astrology and other ways to help you make the most of your week and to heighten confidence for daily life. It's run by Pamela Cuccinell, that's me, the astrologer, and I invite you to find out more about my work at insightoasis.com. I look forward to your joining us every week. Please share with your friends, and here we go.
So the week of December 15th, 2025, what we have going on this week, it's very interesting to me, actually. It's partly because Neptune is direct now as of last week, and it's making its last pass in the sign of Pisces before it goes into Aries for good next year in 2026. So we've been marking this, looking at it, studying it, because what will happen as we get into 2026, of course, and these outer planets all are in air and fire energy, is the acceleration of what I feel is going to be exponential change, fire, passion, and also burnout is going to occur, because what we've been seeing the past few years has been such an acceleration of, well, force, an agenda, and a sense of this is what's happening and just get out of our way, where people feel disempowered and unable to move or shift status quo. And that is going to ignite when we go to next year. And Neptune now is dissolving out of Pisces, which, as I've been speaking for weeks now, is moving from a sense of what is a spiritual connection? How much am I going to self-medicate? Do I feel like a victim? Looking around and seeing other people victimized, a lack of empathy, as opposed to a swelling of empathy and compassion. And as we move into Aries, we begin the zodiacal wheel. Aries, first sign, cardinal fire. In Neptune, it's an interesting energy, and I will be talking about that more in the weeks, months to come. But this week of the 15th, the moon's last dance before it changes sign, each segment is with Neptune, because it's so late degree before it moves into Aries. So what we're seeing is either a confrontation with this Neptunian force or a dovetail working with it. So as the week begins, the moon is in the sign of Scorpio. The other thing to note is that Capricorn is now the sign that Mars is in. And Mars is in Capricorn is actually a very strong position. Some people may not think that. They think of Mars as being a dynamic energy, forceful, at times a bit aggressive, certainly assertive, passionate. And in Capricorn, an earth sign, it may feel kind of quiet and steady to people more than assertive and forceful. But consider this. When you're really working to get something done, regardless of things that might get in the way or shiny objects that can distract, or people who tell you it's impossible, Capricorn is steady. I remember a long time ago when I was in the mountains in Germany, and we encountered a group of goats, mountain goats. And I was struck, I'd been an astrologer for quite some time, but I was totally struck how these creatures were just sort of steadying themselves on very little rock face and gracefully positioning themselves and just moving ahead. No, they weren't leaping up the mountain, but they were putting their hooves down on what seemed to be indiscernible spaces and then hoisting the rest of their body up to this tiny little space and then moving ahead. So it's this slow and steady momentum of Mars that we're getting into now, which really benefits Earth and Water sign people because that force just is very steadying and it's an anchor for one to proceed as methodically, slowly, cautiously, and with eyes totally open and centered in space at whatever task they're trying to achieve. So that's going on. Meanwhile, with the day of Monday kind of bringing this energy within, we steady ourselves with whatever may be kind of in our way. Pluto is at early degrees Aquarius. So when the moon enters the sign of Scorpio or any fixed sign, there's going to be some dialogue with Pluto, which is irrevocable transformation, power, money, just it can be a lot. And it can also have to do with a lot of patterns that we may be locked into thinking this is the way it always is. And so when the moon and Pluto are involved, especially for those of us who may have that in our natal chart, it brings up all these past patterns or forces that try to keep us in a certain space, or passions, addictions, obsessions that can keep us stuck. But the nice thing about this day is that we can face that and look at it for what it is and continue to work with it. It may come through the times I give her Eastern time, so you'll need to adjust if that's not your time zone. But for some of us, especially people in that time zone, you may be sleeping. So it may be some dream that comes up and it may be unsettling, or it can be information that is useful. Actually, dreams are always full of information that is useful. It's the unconscious's way of communicating and bringing us some clarity to something that maybe is not clear to us in our waking life. So I see this as being a very strong and powerful day. We are at the end of the waning moon cycle. The new moon happens later in the week. So Monday, the 15th, and Tuesday, the 16th, are really strong days to be pushing through things you want to wrap up, finish as you get into position for whatever you might want to make happen in the next lunar cycle. Tuesday, one thing I want to add to other things that are going on is there's a picture in the sky between Moon and Jupiter that really bodes well for saying here's an opportunity or something you might want to embrace or take on and utilize in a way that's really beneficial to you or someone else. And the thing with when Jupiter is well aspected with the moon is so much depends on how we feel about it, if we're emotionally connected to whatever's being offered. So if it seems like too much, or if it seems like it's going to overwhelm, consider how you might pace yourself with it so that you don't lose or shun off an opportunity or a gift that may be offered to you just because you're not used to that. And I think that it's really delicious when we're able to discern how to take advantage of something that's being offered us without looking to see what the cost may be. If there is a cost, then you also judge and consider if this is something that behooves you or is a little more than you want. But usually with this position, especially if it's touching your horoscope in some way, if you have a lot of water in your horoscope, Cancer, Scorpio, or Pisces, it could be just really something it's time to embrace. The 17th, the moon goes void of course at 10:24 a.m. and then it enters the sign of Sagittarius at 11:38 a.m. Now, when the moon is void of course, and this is just a relatively brief period of time, we usually say don't start anything new, wrap up things already in motion. Uh, think about it in terms of people are not as emotionally attached to an outcome. So, what sells the most goods? Somebody thinks that, oh, if I buy this product, I'm going to be happier, or I'm going to look like that model, or I'm going to be more attractive, or more sated or satisfied with things. So there's an emotional connection to why someone invests or buys something. And when the moon is void of course, it's not making any geometric connections to other planetary energies. So we're not as attached to what the outcome may be if somebody says, oh, let's do this or go here, or you just meet someone during a void of course moon. It doesn't mean that you're not going to be best friends for life, but there would have to be more juice there. So there's some sort of astrological chemistry that makes the connection either with that moon as it's void of course, or certainly with you and the other person. Sometimes what happens is that you could meet somebody who you end up getting to be really good friends with several years later, but the first meeting is kind of flat, or there's not that connection because the moon's void of course. So you're not signaling in the way that you would that would allow those kind of connections. So as I said, this is a very brief period of time, and certainly Eastern time, it's probably a person's work day or when they're out and about doing things. So it's a good time to exercise, clear your desk, work on projects already in motion. As I said, not really to start anything new, but it certainly can be productive, especially Moon in Scorpio, Monday, Tuesday. Scorpio is a fixed sign. It's focused. The the trick is with it is you want to be focused on something that is productive to be doing, not obsessing about something that just is getting you lost in the weeds. So when we can do that, especially when the moon's void of course. Ideally, you've already positioned yourself with something positive and strong to do before that void of course hits. Then you don't find yourself obsessing about why did I paint it that color? If only I had chosen another shade. Um, you want to direct that laser focus in something that is more useful for you, and it could just be recycling. I know I have a bunch of stuff I have to bring to the recycling area, so maybe I'll do that at that point in time. Okay, so once the moon enters Sagittarius now, over the next couple of days, this energy is a little at cross purposes with that late degree Pisces moon, Pisces Neptune. We may not feel it initially, but anything that you're taking up or engaged with in the afternoon on the 17th into the 18th, and then as we get into Friday the 19th, these are things that ideally, because we're heading towards that new moon in Sagittarius. So, what I see this picture as actually is different different levels or understanding of one's spirituality, or where they put their energy that has to do with belief system. So let me explain that a little better, because your days may have nothing to do with what I'm talking about, but they will reflect it, because here's what's going on. That moon in Sagittarius is very directed. It's fire. It is what we call mutable, so it's adaptable. So Thursday, Wednesday afternoon, evening, and into Friday, there can be a lot of movement with, I want to go here, I want to do this, I want to do that. I mean, we are in the growing peak of the holiday season, so there could be a lot of activity around that kind of thing. Holiday cheer, bouncing around party to party, event to event. But it's an energy that is a bit fired up with whatever the passion or direction may be. One thing I didn't mention, which I will now, is that on Tuesday, the 16th, the Sun and Saturn are at 90 degrees. So from our perspective, it's a square and a right angle, if you will. And so these forces, when they're a little at odds, which is what it can feel like, are pushing a sense of what self-expression is against what is expected, required, what the authorities demand. So this kind of energy, and it's fleeting because the sun, from our perspective, seems to move quickly. Obviously, we're moving around the sun, but that picture is showing the Sagittarius sun that is in a hard aspect, a square, with Saturn, which is in Pisces, also late degrees, and Neptune coming up in a period of a couple of days with the new moon when it's in Sagittarius. So this new moon in Sagittarius basically is challenging status quo authority and the illusion, Neptune, of what that looks like. So Christmas, Hanukkah, the time of year that has to do with the solstice, so many different places in the world, religion, emphasize this time of year as being sacred in some way. And yet, there is such a strong movement about ownership as to what is the most sacred or the most special, or if you will, the most entitled to own God or the answers of what the numinous is, that it's a struggle, it's a conflict. And so decisions that are made over these days, and they can be very simple. They can be simple decisions about things you're doing at work, or if you decide to give to a charity or decide not to, how you might decide you want to vote or not vote, what it is you choose to celebrate or not celebrate. And so Sagittarius, among other things, symbolizes religion. So actual forms, institutions of religion. Pisces symbolizes how we're all connected in this big universal soup. The numinous, the things we don't really understand, the void when you're in meditation, the things that have people feeling intuitive connections, things they can't quite explain, but they feel they know. And so with this picture in the sky between the moon and Neptune, basically in this new moon in Sagittarius, I think one of the themes over the next month, and the energy continues to play out, but one of the themes certainly is, how do these things reconcile or don't within you? Sometimes the comfort of a belief system needs to be challenged. And actually, as any person who's done serious seeking in their lifetime knows, the crisis of faith is always a period when we either cement our beliefs or at times need to modify or shift them. I think a great example to bring up when I'm looking at these pictures over these couple of days is the classic picture, It's a Wonderful Life, with Jimmy Stewart, and how that movie, when it was first made, was considered an absolute bomb, and kind of, it definitely downplayed the role of the director, who I believe was George Cukor. I mean, Stewart was totally committed to it because he had come back from the war and probably had seen all sorts of terrible things. He was a war hero. And his acting and approach to what he did certainly changed after that point in time. Now, the movie just was kind of a wash, and it wasn't until it entered, I think it entered public domain, and then it started being showed all the time. And as a result, it's become an absolute classic. Now, what it shows us at this point in time, with our grossly divided world is how its basic theme talks about how one person has such an effect on so many people's lives. And I think when we come down to that real understanding over these couple of days of the value of life, your life, and everyone who touches your life and every life you touch, this can be an absolute turning point new moon for many of us this holiday season. But it may not always be super comfortable. And as I said to a new friend, a man I've known for a couple of years, but didn't really know that well until we were at a holiday party together. And I said how certain songs always make me cry. And another friend was teasing me that I cried over certain Christmas songs. And I said, well, this time of year for me is bittersweet. It isn't all just happy because it hasn't always been happy throughout the years. And this man, this quiet man, turned to me and he said, I know how you feel. And so it deepened our friendship relationship as we talk quietly with each other. And so for those of you who this time of year is bittersweet as well, my blessings and heart to you, because I think on one hand, it's hard, but on the other hand, it emphasizes the preciousness of life. And as we enter the winter solstice, which is where we are with this new moon, we all want to remember that the darkness here in the northern hemisphere emphasizes the return of light. In the southern hemisphere, endless light has us longing for that womb, that return to darkness, and the balance between the two. So the moon goes void, of course, shortly after the new moon hits exactly at 8:43 p.m. Eastern Time. It goes void, of course, at 10:41 p.m. And then it enters Capricorn at 11:53 p.m. And once in Capricorn, that moon is going to cook along so that it supports when the sun enters Capricorn at 10:03 a.m. on Sunday, the 21st. And this is our winter solstice. And so this weekend, from almost midnight on Friday, the 19th, through Sunday, the 21st, brings in a winter solstice that really sings with the promise that I've been talking about. Find those points of reconciliation with what you truly believe and want in a spiritual sense of compassion, creativity, and expression of love. Bring it to the material world the same sure-footed way those goats I was watching in Germany clung to the mountainside. Bring it down to earth. We need that energy. We need that spiritual loving compassion, creative hope, and thrust and love. And it's in each of us when we are willing to embrace it and make it our priority.
You have been listening to Astrology Insight Now. Please share with your friends, and if you'd like to make a donation, you can do so at astrologyinsightnow.com. Have a stellar week, and we hope to see you next time.